MSD podcast, body mechanics in regard to flexion and hyperextension. CQC and MSD instructors should have a good knowledge and understanding of the human anatomy, medical implications, and in this podcast we will talk about body mechanics and the role they play in self-defense, close quarters combat, and defensive tactics. Understanding how the body works in regard to targeting of bodily extremities and how flexion and hyperextension can be utilized for specific objective achievement is important. Understanding the differences, for example, between hinge joints, ball and socket joints, facet joints, and other bodily joints, as well as degrees of motion in flexion, extension, hyperextension, and rotation, is a must for many aspects of MSD and MIL CQC, including detainee handling. This is not only for operational employments of skills, objective achievement for safety, but also in training for exponent safety. Often with MIL battlefield CQC skills employments in a kill or die actions on, it will come down to overkill gross motor skills, maximum destructive actions. However, in non-lethal actions on in a law enforcement under specific rules of engagement or under the civvy self-defense laws of the land, where individuals are responsible for their actions, knowledge is power for both safety and objective achievement. So this being the case, knowing that, for example, the elbow hinge joint has a flexion range of between 0 to 150 degrees and a hyperextension range between 5 and 15 degrees, and the cervical spine facet joints have a rotational range of between 80 and 90 degrees, and the knee joint taken beyond full extension by anything from a few degrees to 10 degrees is entering the hyperextension range, and this is all valuable knowledge. Understanding ranges of motion and possible and probable outcomes in relation to specific targets and targeting output force levels generated at specific targets, combined with CQC MSD specific tradecraft means and methods of skills employments, is all-encompassing and enabling in both objective achievement and conducting oneself inside ROEs and laws of self-defense. For military qualified CQC instructors, this is standard tradecraft knowledge and expertise. In detainee handling, understanding how flexion and hyperextension works and how tendons, like bicep tendons, can be manipulated to bend the arm in the application of control and restraint skills is very important. Being able to manipulate joints without over-aggression reduces the likelihood of subject panic and resistance. Skills employments should be fluid, seamless actions that do not create panic, adverse reactions or responses, and they should not be overly painful. Flexion and hyperextension can be utilized to decentralize, move, position, or manipulate a subject with ease. They can also be used to move a subject, keeping them between yourself and his comrades. Understanding correct positioning in the utilization of flexion or hyperextension is very important, as in where the tendons connect and where to load joints in relation to the joint positioning. Decentralization can be achieved with both flexion and hyperextension. Flexion is often used under normal circumstances with suspect decentralization, as it is considerably less likely to cause injury, whereas hyperextension is usually used in military roles where the risk and resistance factors are considerably higher and injury concerns are less. In military battlefield disarming, like with trench warfare tools or dagger disarming, the use of hyperextension and dislocation of joints and destruction of joint ligaments and tendons is a primary means of effecting an immediate disarm of the weapon. Understanding how to utilize stress positions, not only for subject or detainee control and containment, but also to achieve cooperation through ensuring the detainee is static and not able or willing to make any aggressive or erratic movement. Maximizes subject and situational control. Stress positions create a sense of detainee or subject helplessness through a fear of making any movement could cause serious injury to themselves. Often in a head and neck related stress position, you will see the subject freeze, tense up, or If the degree of leverage is increased, give a what we call death kick, which is a small movement of the extremity, usually the foot and lower leg, but sometimes the hand and lower arm. This is like an autonomic reaction to the high-risk situation they are in that causes a sense of helplessness and hopelessness. By use of flexion, hyperextension, and in some instances, the raising of the seized and secured limb, pain compliance can be achieved. Pain compliance can also be achieved by using a combination of flexion or hyperextension combined with the seizing, securing, and manipulating of the digits to create pain and in turn ensure static control is achieved and maintained. In bent armed and leg lock positions, the raising of the extremity can achieve pain compliance and the maintaining of a static position through the pain or sensation and realities of realizing if they continue to resist, the joint could be dislocated. Pain compliance can be achieved on the fingers, thumbs, or wrists by firm seizure and securing of the fingers or thumbs, and then controlled straightening and bending, including not only forward straightening and bending, but also lateral straightening and bending. Just like with forward or lateral straightening and bending at the lowest joint, diagonal straightening and bending at the lowest joint can also be utilized to achieve compliance and control. Compound combinations of flexion, hyperextension, and pain compliance employed with both hands are a good way of achieving secure static positions. A range of loading forces can be employed, including rotational and directional angles to load the subject's joint and achieve compliance. While in detainee handling, employments of flexion, hyperextension, and loading, the actions are controlled, careful, slow, increases by increments until the subject is no longer combative and is static. The opposite is employed in the destruction of joints and joint ligaments by sudden aggressive overloading of the joint tendons and ligaments. This can be achieved by utilizing palm heel force or the use of the lower leg, as well as utilizing abdominal body mass force to destroy the seized and secured joint. Some detainee handling skills utilized, say with a straight arm. If the detainee attempts to bend their arm, the motion can be continued by employing bent arm flexion or even hyperextension by rotating, say, the wrist and loading the elbow joint and even shoulder joint, simply by means of maintaining control but changing from a straight arm skill to a bent arm, rotational, loaded, angled skill, including decentralizing the detainee and positioning and locking the upper arm on the ground surface. Even greater forces generation can be achieved. In detainee handling roles, the rule of thumb is to seize and secure the extremity and take out any slack in the joint, then gradually, by increments, apply leverage, including forward, horizontal, or angular leverage and rotation until static cooperation is achieved. Abdominal blocking and locking can be utilized in bent arm lock positions to ensure the bent extremity is locked in position and cannot be freed. Just like with using loading to achieve static cooperation, the level of force can be backed off in increments once controlled cooperation has been achieved. No sudden actions or release of one grip without the other hand already being in a controlled seizure position is most important to prevent escape. There are wide-ranging uses for flexion and hyperextension joints loading, including path clearing, decentralization, and subject movement and positional manipulation. These can be achieved not only with the hands and arms, but also by utilization of the shin and the boot sole. Under such role and duty specific training, the exponent or proponent will be instructed in correct positioning, correct levels of force, the direction facing by the operator to achieve the most secure and safe, best skills execution, as there are very specific means and methods of seizing, securing, setting up, applying, and achieving the objective, utilizing flexion and hyperextension for detainee handling and also for limb joints destruction. This is very important learnt skills, especially with stress positions that involve the spinal cord, as they can be utilized not only for immediate detainee static containment, but also for the destruction of the spinal cord, and any errors in the level of force or correct procedures of skills initiation and employment could end in spinal injuries or even death. Take, for example, the old Special Ops unarmed combat spinal dislocator of our predecessors. You need to have not only knowledge of the specific extremities and joints range of motion, but also by feel be able to identify the range of motion and when the maximum range of motion has been achieved. If you do not understand this and take it beyond that, there are not only the risks of serious injury or death, but also that the subject in a helpless, hopeless position has only one option to try and free themselves of the pressure, pain, and restriction, and that is panic and dynamic movement escape attempts. Directional facing is very important, as some skills can be very effectively employed facing rearward but not facing forward, and vice versa. This is because the subject's position and direction of facing may enable them to be able to resist or prevent the loading action employment. However, if the skill was to be applied in the opposite facing direction, they would not have the same ability to prevent or resist the effects of the limb and joint loading. An important part of this is the positioning of the boot sole or hand palm heel to get the maximum purchase on the joint in both loading of the extremity and the joint to achieve static control and containment, and in the complete destruction of the extremity joint ligaments and tendons. Opposing forces, either controlled leverage or dynamic destruction, are used to maximize effect. The combination of opposing forces, flexion or hyperextension, with a pain compliance skill on the small digits can be utilized, combined with commanding the subject to tell his comrades to back off or you will cause him serious injury. Often the voice of their comrade in relation to pain, fear and panic will gain compliance, whereas if the operator tells the subject's comrades, they may well ignore it. In detainee handling, control and restraint skills employments, understanding how to use various actions and movements to straighten or bend and fold the arm is very important, as these movements can be achieved with the palm heel, the hand edge, the knee or shin, as well as the abdomen or hip. The actions can be by pushing, striking, bunting, or even rolling the tendon. While skills for law enforcement or security purposes may be by controlled, careful leverage, the same skills could be employed for military battlefield roles with dynamic impact contact. Hence why the difference between civilian, law enforcement, and military skills can be the decided, utilized limb and direction and level of force. Using contact impact with a hard legs, hard hands, kneeing and palm heel striking action to achieve a bent arm lock position is considerably faster and harder than using controlled leverage by increments with the hand alone. Compound directional leverage can be utilized in the same direction or in opposite directions depending on the role and the required outcome. Understanding the probable injuries and the probable outcomes of utilizing compound same direction leverage and opposite direction leverage is important to ensure the outcomes are in line with objective achievement and do not cause unnecessary or unwanted injury or worse outcomes. Primary skills by flexion or hyperextension can be achieved in careful, slow rate decentralization, as well as in rapid, high rate loading dynamic decentralization that increases the risks of injury through ground impact and the dynamic nature of the extremity and joint loading. In military specialist unarmed threat neutralization in roles such as unarmed option, sentry neutralization, or decentralization by knee joint destruction, overkill, gross motor skill, maximum force is utilized to achieve the threat neutralization objective. Combination, hyperextension, and flexion skills employments provides the capability to lock the extremity and load it straight, and then, by means of flexion, release the straight line hyperextension, pain and effect, and replace it with a bent joint controlled positioning, which to the detainee could provide the sensation of lesser effect and less risk to the extremity and joint. Very important in such transitions is that one hand never lets go until the other hand is in position, so secured control is always maintained. In some such detainee handling employments, when initial control and containment has been achieved, the operator can instruct and command the detainee to undertake certain specific actions to assist in the transition, and often they will do so simply to reduce the feel and effect of the pressure, pain, and injury risk to the limb joint. Ground subject cooperation can be achieved by secured pain compliance, not only in positional and skills transitions, but also to make them release their grip or extract their hands and arms from under their bodies in a controlled movement that enables the identifying of any concealed weapons or objects and aids in the execution and employment of control and restraint skills, including mechanical restraint devices employments. The importance of being highly trained in the medical aspects and considerations of all MSD, CQC, and detainee handling skills is very important, as this provides knowledge on how to seize, secure, control, and contain all parts of the human body, which will aid in transitions from one skill to another. Knowledge of human anatomy weaknesses or weak spots assists in positioning of hands, knees, your boots, or your body weight via your torso to contain and control a subject as part of secure transitions. In MIL CQC and MIL self-defense, the use of flexion and hyperextension is an important part of not only operational objective achievement, but also in training and testing to provide realistic outcomes in objective achievement without the loss of life or limb. Flexion or hyperextension decentralization, when the adversary has been secured on the deck, continued utilization of flexion, hyperextension, or controlled pain compliance can be utilized not only to secure the subject on the ground, but also for the employment of mechanical restraints or in handovers to other agencies or services. This also includes the utilization of weapons, inflection, hyperextension, and loading of extremities, joints, also in pain compliance by means of targeting soft targets, including delicate human sensors and life support systems. Ground loading pain compliance can be via the combat boot if the combatant has primary knowledge of the human anatomy and soft target areas that create or generate extreme pain, and can be utilized by controlled compression to achieve control over the static subject. From urban operators, self-defense, tactics and skills employments through to military CQC, battlefield actions on and in detainee handling for military roles, as well as law enforcement, defensive tactics, and in close personal protection, where the threat must be controlled, contained, and handed over to authorities. Flexion, hyperextension, and pain compliance through a high-level knowledge of the human anatomy and how to exploit weaknesses and targets, as in soft targets, to achieve control and compliance are all part of effective objective achievement. Hyperextension, flexion, and pain compliance cross over not only into all skills, initiations, and employments, but also in contingency options executions where you need to stop a foe in their tracks from escaping your control and containment by means of subject rapid or slow controlled decentralization as a result of flexion and hyperextension, often combined with autonomic reactions to pain and a state of helplessness. Objective achievement outcomes are by means of having both the knowledge of the human anatomy, medical aspects and implications, and the military self-defense and military close quarters combat tactics and skills to target fitting human anatomy targets, including extremities and extremities joints, affecting not only the joints but also ligaments and tendons as part of achieving the desired threat neutralization objective. One without the other does not provide the full capability. The knowledge must be from both a medical aspects and a hands-on employment of MIL, CQC and MSD tactics and skills, utilization and employment. Being able to, at real time, under duress, look at the enemy's human anatomy as a smorgasbord of targets and capabilities provides the expertise to target or change target if the threat and situation requires it, and achieve by means of controlled aggression or overkill, kill or die, battlefield actions on aggression, threat neutralization. This all comes down to knowledge, know-how, and hands-on high-level competency, providing high-level commensurate capabilities to achieve objectives, threat neutralize within rules of engagement or laws of self-defense. While the combatant's medical aspects knowledge is generic in regard to the human anatomy, it is their medical aspect and implications combined with their military CQB, CQC and MSD skills capabilities that provides the capability to threat neutralize by armed and unarmed means and methods.